Okay, this is a meeting of the the Joint Capital Planning Committee. And pursuant to the governor's orders suspended to certain provisions of open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, meetings of the joint
Capital Planning.
Capital Planning Committee are being conducted via remote participation. A roll call will be checked to make sure everyone is here and can be seen and be heard. And we are being recorded. So I will call the meeting to order of the Joint Capital Planning Committee. And the first order of business is to elect a chair. Oh, no, let me call roll first. Yeah. So Bob Hegner.
Present.
Sarah Marshall.
Present.
Kathy Shane.
I'm here.
Miss Haynes, I'm sorry, was it Bridget?
Yeah.
Okay,
Haynes.
thank you. Bridget Haynes. Lee Edwards. Lee, I didn't hear you. Can you just hear?
Yeah, we're not
It's
hearing
very
you.
low.
You're
Just
faint.
so you know. Okay. Counselor Lord.
Present.
Thank you. And Nat Larson.
I'm here.
Thank you. And now the first order of business is going to be to elect a chair. Do we have any nominations? Counselor Hegner.
I nominate Kathy Shane.
Is that a second from Heinz?
You actually, Melissa, you just need to know whether I'm going to accept
Okay.
that.
Yeah, you don't
Okay.
need a second.
Okay.
And I do accept.
Nice. Any other nominations? Would you like to say anything, Kathy?
No, I'd be delighted to serve as chair. As a few of you know, because you've been on the committee, I've done this in the past. So I think I can be a bridge as we have a person taking on a task that is really a difficult one, namely Melissa, of pulling all of the projects to order. So I'd be happy to serve again.
Right. So I guess we'll take a vote again. So Bob Hegner,
Yes.
Cheryl Marshall,
Sarah, yes.
Kathy Shane,
Yes.
Bridget Hines,
Yes.
Lee Edwards. We're going to do lip reading today. Counselor Lord.
Yes.
And Nate Larson.
Yes.
Okay, so now I get to take this over from Melissa.
Yeah.
And we are now open for nominations for vice chair of the committee. And I just in terms of what this has entailed, and it's going to be even more so this year from my perspective, is the vice chair has helped write the report and taken a role when we in either drafting or correcting. So are there nominations? Melissa, is your hand up?
No, my hand isn't up.
Okay. Okay, so I see Bob Hegner's hand is up.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Sarah Marshall.
Thank you. Yes, I've done. I went through this last year. I'd be happy to help Kathy.
Hey, I'd actually, Sarah, I just want to say one other thing, but because I would be delighted to do it, but if anyone else, I have a vacation scheduled for the first week and into the second week of April, which is, I think this committee is going to run that late. So this may require a real leadership role, hopefully from you, to help write the report. I mean, we've got a template for it. So
Yes, and thank you for that warning. Remind us maybe what is the due date, or kind of
well,
as possible.
in because the due date is before the town manager has to submit the budget to the council, and that's May 1st. You know, so the later we go, I mean, the town manager is following what we're doing. And just so everyone knows, we are making a recommendation to the town manager. So we're not a decision, we are recommending, but for the most part, that recommendation has become the joint capital planning report. So Sarah, you know, by no later than the third week in April, I think we have to have finished the report. You know, and then the schedule really depends. We have all of March. We're going to be meeting weekly. So we could be at draft report by the end of March, depending on how the schedule works. So are there any other nominations just on that long? So then I will put it to a vote. Bob,
Yes.
Kathy is a yes. Sarah,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Lee. And Lee, I don't know, at some point, we're going to have to get you so we can actually hear you. I can see your wording for yes. Hala.
Yes.
And Nat, are you Nat or Nate? Nat?
Nat.
Nat.
But
Oh,
I've been
sorry.
called worse.
Okay, so it's unanimous. And we have a chair and vice chair. The other thing to know about this committee is we take our own minutes. So at each session, I ask for a volunteer for the minutes. And there's a template, and I'm going to volunteer for the very first one because we don't have a very long meeting today and I can do it. And we do it in a Word document and the template follows the agenda. So it's not a script. So I will be asking for volunteers each week. So be thinking about that or you can send me which week you're willing to volunteer for. So minute takers. So I will do it this time around. So Melissa, I'm going to turn it back over to you for basically orienting us to what we're doing as a committee, what the process is going to be. And then we have resident proposals that we're going to be reviewing at this session. But my understanding from a brief conversation of Melissa is that these are also being reviewed by police, fire, and/or DPW because
Yeah.
the set we have all interacts. So we'll have an opportunity to talk more about them when those departments are up before us. So right now it should be compiling any questions we have, need for further information about those. So Melissa, you figure out which order you want to do it in on the review of the report we're pulling. What is the 5-year plan that we're working on? We have, and I think we have 1, 2, 3 people who have not served previously on this committee. So I think that's correct. So this is for benefit for all of us, but also people who this is their first time through.
So I had provided in your packet, the capital plan that is ultimately produced after we get the recommendations from this committee. And a lot of the, information that goes into the packet, of course, is discussed at this committee, and that's how it lands there. Would you like me to just share last year's plan on my screen here? Does that work for people? Do you want to just kind of walk through what happens?
I think that would be good, Melissa, and you can do it either process-wise or you could scroll down to the 5-year plan, what the table looks like that we ultimately produce. You can figure out how you want to,
Okay.
if that's okay with everyone, just to put it up on the screen.
Okay, so do you see the capital? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
You do. Okay. So this is last year's capital plan. And this sort of, describes the role and the process. And then let's see if we can introduce this sort of, we sort of display, graphically how the money was spent in that current year. This is sort of a timeline of the thing. So we're starting here in February. We're going to start discussing projects and, through March, and then the recommendation, it looks like, happens, you know, in April. So that calendar is helpful. And then this is the 5-year plan that we ultimately produce that shows, and you can see that, you know, last year they have, you know, what the projects were that were approved in the highlighted, and those are the ones that we'll sort of look at, you know, each project, the ones that we think will land in the fiscal 26 project. You can see that we're overspent in fiscal 26, and that doesn't include all the new fancy things that it came through, as it sometimes does. And then, you know, and so some of these things with what we've received so far, just so the committee knows, you know, some of these things by the departments themselves said, hey, you know, and I, let's take something that's like this is the list of things. That's the funding mechanism and where it ends up. But the like, let's just say I haven't finalized anything with IT yet, but let's just say like their web, well, let's see, this is other department requests, $46,000. They put it out there. Maybe they say, you know what, other department requests is not going to be done this year. You know what I mean? So that might have get moved to 28 by the department. I'm not sure what actually Sean is going to decide when we kind of go through his list of priorities, but sometimes these priorities that were pushed back keep getting pushed back because they're not, the department's not ready to move forward with them. And so you can see that, you know, most of this in history, you know, we try to do a lot of the capital planning with cash capital. There is some borrowing for the larger priced items, but the, you know, we try and do as much as with cash that we can because, you know, obviously we can get more done that way. But sometimes the larger project, obviously it would eat up all the funds we have. So that's how we got to the 6 million that we spent last year. And then this is a brief narrative of all the projects that move forward for the 2025 budget, or capital budget. And then there's a lot of supporting documents. I will, you know, I'm still putting together this. I have this list of open projects. I updated it about a month ago, but I think I'm going to go ahead and update it again with you know, today's dates, because you know, projects are ongoing, so maybe they got finished before I took them out, you know, to not to leave them on this list. But we'll compare to, you know, what's been going, and if there's anything on there that Kathy had mentioned before, anything on there where the project is complete and there's a little bit of surplus that might be able to be pushed back into this committee's purview to use on another project. It didn't appear when I looked a month ago that there was anything like that. So sorry for the disappointment. And this is just more information about how we structure it. And you'll also get a capital inventory of all of the assets that we have, and I'm working on compiling it now there, and I'm trying to add a little bit more information about specifically, I'll be able to do a little bit more with the vehicles around this hybrid electric. And I think I'm gonna, I know that we highlight them here, but I've got a report from our sustainability director, Stephanie, that I think maybe I can put it in and maybe start to, instead of just doing it by color, do a sortable column and also identify if we can, anything that's transitioning in this year. You know, like if we know that this, you know, this vehicle is being replaced this year. I'm just taking an example. I don't know that that's true, and it will move. Then we can show that process through the report. This is one of the goals that has been asked, that we sort of start to design a plan of moving to a greener community. And the easiest place for that to start for me is the vehicles, just because of the work that's already been done. And these are debt schedules. So, you know, a part of what the capital funding is based on like how much debt we already have. So of the 6 million that's available this year, you know, maybe 3 million is already committed to debt. And so we only have 3 of cash capital to spend. I'm just making up numbers here. That's not actually the numbers, but we'll give you this detail on where we are. So that's the report of last year. And that's, you know, the goal. I know your goal is to write that report, but the ultimate goal is that we all together get to this report, you know, in some similar fashion, to report out to the community what the priorities of this committee, the town manager, and the staff are for capital investments in this year. One other thing that I did that is a little bit different than what's in this report, but I wanted to share with this committee is JCPC packets, and is I took what is, and some of the people on this meeting will recognize this chart. It's a section of our projection chart that we present kind of over and over again to the council and to the into finance and to, you know, the budget coordinating group. And there's a capital section. And so I just want to kind of share this with you. And what I'm trying to go is sort of to make the reports all sort of look the same, so that when we're presenting the information, you know, there's not confusion about where those numbers came from, and that we're not presenting different information. So not all of this information is relevant to this committee, but I thought it was a good place to start to understand where the numbers came from. So the town of Amherst has a policy right now that, or a practice maybe is probably better to say, that we spend 10.5% of what's called the net tax levy. And so how that number is calculated is we take the base levy of the current year we're in, which is 2025, and we multiply that by 10.5, and that gets this this number here. And that's the number that we have to work with this year inside this committee. So you'll see that the forecasted capital expense is much higher than that. So part of that, a good part of that, is this debt exclusion. So, you know, just so the committee's aware, I mean, I think you all are, we're building a new school at Fort River. It's a $100 million school, plus or minus, right? And we're borrowing for about 50% of that. And this is the projected debt for that. This number is a projected number. It's not a true number. We have not borrowed for that capital yet. So this is a projected number and not a true number, but we have to, for budgeting purposes, put that in. And so that money is collected separately on the tax, separately in the tax levy, and may only be spent on that. So we can't use that for other things. This debt service, not funded by taxes, like CPA projects would end up there, PEG stuff would end up there. So we have other debt that we can put there. Again, that money is collected separate and can only be spent on things associated with those programs. So it is part of our overall capital, but not necessarily within the purview of this committee. The regional debt assessment, again, not in the purview of this committee, but it's important to note that of our overall operating capital that we work with here in this committee, we need to allow for whatever the regional assessment is for debt. So whatever projects they're working on within their working groups at the regional school system, they'll let us know. And this is the most up-to-date number that I have from them at this time for fiscal 26, and that comes out of what's available to us. This 600,000 is what our current debt service is for 2026. Should we not borrow anything else tomorrow? That, of course, is not it's not a hard and fast number, and we're going to do some debt service early next month, so we'll know more exactly what our debt service will be in 2026 of actual projects. We always put in a budget to pay short-term debt. And so then what's left for this committee to work with is about $5.5 million. And of that $5.5 million, some of that will get gobbled up by debt that we issue on projected projects that have already been authorized by this committee and the council. And, you know, when this 600,000 moves to 2, then we'll have a more a clearer picture on how much money there is to spend in cash capital. Or even if the committee decides that we're going to borrow for some of the projects that are being presented to you this time, we'll have to alter this number. So that 5.5 in conjunction with the 6.6 needs to cover any new cash capital and any debt service already authorized by the committee that we might have to borrow for next month. And so Jen and I are working on that together. And my goal for this committee is to keep these two charts, the chart that we present to the budget coordinating group and our capital budget, kind of in sync, so that we're always having the same conversation about those numbers and how they change. So that's kind of how I wanted to go about talking about this, Kathy. I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add or subtract from that.
No, I'll just add a few things, and then I'm also going to look for questions. So, you know, when we are meeting over the next several weeks, we're going to be going through the capital request department by department, or maybe 2 or 3 departments. So we're going to be seeing this year's requests for vehicles, for roads, for repairs, building maintenance, for IT. And the most of the meeting will be focused on the request for fiscal year 2026. Some of the larger ones, so what Melissa just pointed out, some of the larger requests being, you know, $500,000, $1 million requests, are often funded by debt rather than cash. And that's usually with a recommendation from the finance director at the beginning, you know, so we know we're looking at cash, but we can make that decision. When we make a decision that a large expenditure is going to be funded by debt, it doesn't show up as against cash capital for this next year. It's the following year. So, you know, if we say last year we did 900,000 for the beginning of a communication system for fire, and that didn't show up against the cash capital for the FY25, but we're now seeing it in FY26 because we authorized it. So some of that juggling around the cash that Melissa has talked about will be as we go through both trying to get down to a number that balances the budget. We can't be at deficit. So we're trying to get to it. We have as much money we're spending. We'll also be looking at the 4 years other requests. And I think it was Bob who said last year during this process that it's enough to focus on 1 year and really get that down. The next year, so FY 27, 28, 29, and 30 for us, starts to get, departments may have put things on that will disappear over time, but we don't spend a lot of time looking at those. I think this year, we may need to, because when Melissa puts up the projections,
Recording in progress.
we are going to be starting to compete with the hopes that DPW comes online. So there's some big capital projects coming online, but most of the focus will be on this year's request. The other thing I just wanted to say when she ran through this, that inventory of vehicles is really useful to look at when we're looking at vehicle purchases. So some of the questions that have been asked, in the fact you already have 5 of these, why do you need 2 more? Or why are we replacing? So that inventory was an innovation a few years ago that's been really helpful to say, do we really need to replace this truck? Because the vehicles are getting more and more expensive over time, and it's a big chunk of this capital. So that's just to give you a framework for the focus will be on this year's. And then the other thing for the new people who are new, a lot of what Melissa just showed is given to us rather than we're not having to write it. We're really focused on that first table, making sure the FY 26 capital aligns with how much money we have to spend, and getting down to the list of projects for the coming year with any discussion. The inventory, the how much money is potentially recaptured from past expenditures, that appropriations that weren't spent, that is all provided to us. So this isn't, we're not generating the huge report that you just saw. We're generating some of the pieces of the report. The only other thing I wanted to mention was I just think as I'd say, we're just generating. There was a request from the Finance Committee that to the extent we can't afford something in FY 26, from given what we know as our cash capital, that we say these 2 or 3 were really high on our list of priorities if we could have, so that if there's surplus at the end of the year, which we won't know until late fall of FY 25, rather than just what should we spend it on, we at least as a committee have recommended a few areas. So we've identified them, as in the wings that we would have liked to have been able to do them if we could have. And again, we are recommending to the town manager. So this may not or may not be part of the final report. So I just wanted to add that. And I guess for Bob should chime in, but any questions about tables, anyone who wants to, I don't understand what these definitions are. I'd be happy to spend time in between meetings to walk people through. I see Bob's hand is up and Sarah's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to for people who are new to this committee, the first table that starts on page, I guess, 7 of the report, vehicles they're not done as part of the departments. They're done all at once. You can see by department, but they're done all at once at the bottom of the table. So if you're looking for, you have to kind of factor in vehicles when you're looking at a particular department.
Do I have the right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the right one. So
Yeah.
if you just scroll down to page 9, I guess it is, Melissa, you'll see the vehicles are there at the bottom. There they are. So just bear in mind that the vehicles aren't put into the upper part of the table. The second thing is I've learned that especially the specialized vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances, there's quite a delay now in terms of when you order them and when you get them. So we need to be thoughtful about how long it takes to get the actual vehicle to know when we're going to have to pay the bill for that. So we may see a need for a new fire truck, but it's even if we ordered it now, it wouldn't be available for 2 or 3 years. So that,
3 is the most recent update I
yeah,
got
3,
from the fire
right.
chief.
So,
Yep.
so I mean, we're going to have to think ahead a little bit in terms of what we're committing to buy now and what we're going to have to pay later.
So, Bob, I have a question just of Melissa, and then I'll call the others on that delay. Do we, if we say we're buying this ambulance and it's not going to be delivered for 3 years, do we expend anything so does that show us coming out of this year, or is that put on a future piece?
So if it's cash capital, it's taken out in this year and it's put into a capital article and that's part of like in this other part of this report where I can't remember if it's up or down, where it says the projects that are ongoing, those are all things that were voted and are taking a while to complete. So sometimes the reason that I just want to scroll down to this thing here. Yeah. Sometimes the reason that there is money left in these projects is because we're waiting on supply chain issues. So like, for the air conditioner, it's entirely possible, and I don't know the specifics of this project, but it was entirely possible that that project was underway, but they couldn't get a part. So the whole project was stalled by 6 months. And that's why they haven't fully expended it. Like I'm making up stuff now, so don't hold me to it, but I'm just trying to give an example. And so there might be a building, a vehicle on here. Like this looks like it's fully done and they have a little bit of surplus, $318. But there might be a vehicle on here or new equipment would be a good thing to look at. And if they're waiting on delivery of that, that's why that full 85 is sitting there. It's not because so that money came out in the year it was voted. And then for for a borrowed, so like a fire truck, which is, over $1 million, we would borrow for that. That's, sort of the calculation or the sort of back and forth about, how much capital do we have, because what's our total borrowing? Because our total borrowing is, I'm just going to see if I can, our total, like this number right here is really low, but I know that there's 2 or 3 large projects that are authorized that we've been waiting for them to be delivered so that we can borrow for them. And so the borrowing authorization, like you said, it doesn't come out of this year, it comes out of next year. But then if it's not delivered, it comes out way out here. If it's not delivered for 3 years, it's not going to show up and hitting until 2029. And so that's why, we're going to go through and review everything that we can, that's been completed, that we need to put in for our true debt for next fiscal year. And then I'm going to have to put in some lines about projected debt and, see if I can get an update from, let's say the fire department. I know he's waiting on 2 ambulances at this time, and one's 1 year out and one's, 2 years out. So, when does he expect delivery on them? And so then we can put that projection in to start that debt at a later date.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So I think Sarah was next and then Bridget.
Yeah, thank you. And I was booted out of the Zoom and it took me forever to get back in. So if my questions have already been asked, I'll just check in with someone later. But the first I think is easy for these projects, like the ambulances on order. They haven't been delivered, so we haven't started paying. We've appropriated the money. Is the price guaranteed?
Yes, when they order it, that does lock in the price.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My
And
other
we literally cut checks for them and we give them the money the day the truck's delivered. We don't do any deposits or anything like that.
Oh, okay. My other question is, and I couldn't figure this out last year either. I'm trying to get the FY26 column on pages 7, 8, and 9 of what, the projected requests for this FY '26, trying to get that to match up to the numbers on page 6. So, for example, there's a total of $7,524,251 in projects in the long table, 1.575 million of which is to be borrowed, and I see that particular number right there in borrowing for FY '26. It kind of right in the middle of the table. But then I can't I can't match all the other projects, which total like $5.9 million. I can't see how that all is reflected in this table we're looking at now.
So I'm not sure I follow your question because I don't know what you're looking at, but I
Pages
can
7,
try
8,
and
7, 8, and 9.
7, 8, 9, this.
Yeah, if you go
so
to
you
the
want-
bottom for FY '26, there's a number there.
Yep.
And
Got-
yeah, and I've backed out the borrowing, the 1.575 million, and that's in the table on page 6.
Mhm.
But I can't get the balance. I can't see where the balance is showing up in this table. The net of,
Right,
which
the
I
net
assume is
project,
cash.
this
If it's
for
not
this,
borrowed, it's cash. So
right.
how come I don't? Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably a combination between, I'm not sure. I'll have to, I don't know. So I'm happy to look at that and see if I can get it to tie out, and get, my assumption is that it's in the detail of like the, of somewhere. And my only thought is that maybe pieces of are in this line, and pieces are in, like, because this number, this projected number, again, not real. You know what I mean? Like, it was a guess, a best guess at the time. So
Well, I
I'll
would
see if
hope
I
that
can
this-
try and, like, so you want to tie that 6
Yeah, I
million.
would hope they do. I would hope this summarize it, because this is where we get the the over under number. So it suggests we need to cut out,
Yeah,
and
I'm
this is
sure
the-
it does. I just am not as familiar with this.
Okay.
And that's, part of why and I don't know what part you missed, so I'm trying to use the other table, like this table, is that there's so many tables in this town that need to tie up together, and they're housed differently. And so that's why like this, like, again, it's a little more information than you need, but it's similar to the table that's there. And I want all of them to tie, and to me to understand, so that I can answer your questions on how they tie in. And I think that they probably do. And, I'll dig into it and I'll get you that answer. There are pieces behind each one of those summary numbers that live in different places. And I don't understand them all at this moment. I will
Great.
before we're
Once you
done
do-
here.
Once you understand them, please tell, please tell us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, and Sarah, when Melissa goes back to look at it, as you know, because you were on this last year, none of us really looked closely at those additional years because things kept moving. But in that FY '26 projected list, that column of things, we're going to see some of those projects drop off or new ones come on. And
Oh, I know, I know.
then the other thing is some were labeled for debt, in which case they show up as we've authorized it, but they don't show up. So Melissa will have to reconcile it for them. But my hope was that the behind the scenes, one populated the other, but we didn't cross-check as you're now doing. So just everyone, so that FY '26, we're going to see a revised FY '26 when Melissa starts bringing us the projects.
Mhm.
So, and then the other thing I just want to say, and then Bridget's hand is up. One of the things we've been carrying, which is the debt projection, has been the library, Jones Library. And because there's been a delay in the building actually starting. That keeps moving in terms of it. I'm only mentioning it because it's not a small number. It's $1 million, so if at the point that is actually in the works, it's showing up as actual debt, when it has. And so we've the last 2 years of this committee meeting, we've had that number given to us, but it wasn't there for spending because it was already committed to the library. So that has just kept moving on when those numbers will be there. The final thing I just want to say, because Bridget, your hand is up now, is that I see that Melissa has now updated the regional debt. We don't vote on that. We get delivered that number. So the number that was in her blue table shows regional. That's going to make a big difference for the out years, because of the jump up for 27, 28, 29. The regional was penciled in at about 800,000 and it's now jumped up to million. I'm just saying that we're hoping to get somewhat balanced over the 5 years. We didn't succeed in getting it completely balanced last year, not having any big negatives, but we're going to be seeing some movement in various of the numbers, although we'll focus on FY26.
Right. And so I did want to say that, when I talked to Shannon about those numbers, when I asked for the updated numbers a few months ago, she said, she said, don't panic about the out years. She's like, basically they have a lot of stuff on their plate, just like we do. And, hopes and dreams are that we could do it all today, but that's just not our reality. So she wants to capture the liability or the acknowledgement that these are big projects that are coming, and that as they hone their current year the same way that we're doing here, that they'll adjust the out years based on how they decide to fund their projects. So just like this committee, they spend a lot of time concentrating on the current year and future projects, and wanting to acknowledge that those future projects are there, but understanding that they need to sort of prioritize them and spread them out. And their chart only goes out 5 years. And so, some of the stuff in the out years really goes out beyond 5 years because that's the reality of how they're going to fund it. So, but it does have a huge impact on what we have available, because just like our debt that we've authorized, their debt, once they authorize it, and they're starting to pay on it, comes out of that 10.5% and our total number. So, they will have, both, all debt basically comes out with that is not funded by CPA or some other funding source, like then we would have to, we have this, specific number, the $6 million that needs to cover debt for both the region and the town and the library and the elementary schools, all of those things, and then any cash capital for the general fund of the town in addition to, or the school or the library, all kind of wrapped into that one number is how that's laid out.
Bridget.
Bridget, you're
You're
muted.
You're muted.
Oh, thanks. My questions were about the big, the first chart that you presented, Melissa, where you're showing that you said we're starting out a little bit behind or in the red. And I had 2 questions about that are related to other things that are going on across town or in different places. I know FinCom voted $50,000, or no, $500,000 for roads. And I wonder, is that shown in that table? And then the second question I had was, after the November surplus, the new number someone said at school committee is larger. Does some of that money move over to the JCPC project, or what happens with additional surplus that that came to the table?
So this committee at this time, the way that Amherst is structured, and that's part of the discussion that Kathy talked about earlier, that the Finance Committee has asked us to prioritize projects so that should there be a large surplus, that, you know, maybe projects A, B, and C get pulled in from that cash capital. So so the roads right now in this projection are not there because it happened now in 2025, and so we're looking at 2026. So it wasn't originally in this process, and it's not going to be in the 2026 process because it's voted now. So no, it's not there. The other thing, I'm trying to think what you asked. So as far as like the school and the both the Amherst schools come to this committee, and I've received a couple requests. That's part of the request we'll review of what they want to do for this year. And then, like I said, the region, they do all of their capital, as I understand it, all the capital that they submit to us inside the that is inside the capital improvement program, but it doesn't come through this committee, is that they've authorized debt in a process unto themselves, and that debt is then assessed to the communities that are part of the region, and that 400,000. I want to do this. This 400,000 is what they have told us for next year, and they have this out years of over $1 million, and that, like I said, kind of if we're starting with 7 million in 2028, that 1 million, if that's what they actually carry, and like I said, she said they'll. I don't know if it'll be 1 million or if it will be, 500,000 when they get there, but that comes off of what's available for debt service for town, school, and town meaning Amherst School and library, and also the cash capital. Like these 4 numbers right here all add up to that number. Like that's how that works. So every time something in the region goes up, any debt at all goes up, that's how those numbers come. But you're right that the capital that is done after the budget process doesn't get included in this part. Because we're not reporting. This report is for fiscal 25 and for fiscal 26. And the report that you did for fiscal 25 was completed by the time the new money for the roads came in this year. Does that make sense? I feel like I talked in a circle.
I mean, you explained a couple of things I already understood, but then I learned some new things, so I appreciate you. But what I wanted to say was that the question I had was about the town surplus, because the town surplus had gone up since it was given at the November town council meeting. And so then I wondered, will that extra town surplus come over here to JCPC, or where does it go? Do you know?
So the town surplus, you mean when we were doing our projections?
Like your end of the
Free
year when you
cash.
had free cash and everything, and then town council voted on it. Apparently that number's gone up.
It has not gone up.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
what
So
I heard last
I
night at
will
school
say that
committee, so I wanted to check.
So the free cash is certified at one point during the year, and it comes out in the fall. It's effective July 1 of last year, and it is a number. It's a solid number. I will say that we then took that number, moved some money into stabilization, and that there were a couple projects that were before the council to approve, and not all of them got approved at at the original request. So the number that was projected to be in free cash was higher than what we had said it was going to be, because the council decided they had voted down the $1 million. So what was left in free cash after it was certified was now higher by $1 million. And then they decided to take 500,000 out of it. So that original surplus is a solid number, and it remains the same until June 30th, and then is subtracted by each one of these votes that we do at council. And so that 500,000 came out of the free cash, but I guess in a sense there was more available in there because it wasn't $1 million. It was only 500,000. And there were a couple other projects that they decreased by $10,000 or $20,000 also, that they had shrunk the authorized amount. Does that make sense? Have I explained that?
So,
That completely makes sense. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
so right now, Bridget, the town is carrying somewhat higher than the 5% free cash that they originally said. It's in a free cash bucket.
Mm.
Bob,
Well, some of that free cash is ARPA funds, right, Melissa?
So not yet. So
Not yet.
we had a meeting the other day for others on the committee where we said that at the end of December, given what's going on politically, nationally, ARPA are federal funds, and there were strict rules around how and when you can spend that. And we chose to expend that money within the legal parameters of that grant as quickly as possible before December 31st. And so we did that. And by doing so, we project that certain accounts will have a surplus at the end of the year because we spent them in accounts that we had funded in other ways so that we could just spend the money today. So that it wouldn't be subject to clawback. Not that we know that's going to happen, but we just didn't know. So, and so we explained at the town council that, there's a significant amount of funds that will be included in the surplus at the end of fiscal 25 in July because of what we did.
Okay. My point that I was about trying to raise is
Mm.
that some of the debt that is taken on by CPA is for the region, for the regional school, for example, the track and
Track.
field.
Yeah.
So it's separate. It's separate, but because only from the point of view of it's a separate pot of money from a separate tax source, but it's
And those funds also are governed by that committee
right.
and rules of CPA. You can only spend it on, you can't buy a fire truck with it.
Right. No, I understand that. But I mean, but just it's the investments in the regional school infrastructure are higher than you would only see in the regional assessment budget part. That's what I was trying to say.
and Bob, to the extent it shows up in this report in detail, if it was borrowed at all, it shows up in that very last table that was debt authorization. So you can see the first round of regional school track is there. So the CPA detail that is part of that larger table, that less CPA, does show up, but we don't do a full report on what was allocated. Sarah?
In case y'all weren't watching the regional school committee meeting last night, we authorized to award the contract for the track and field project. So
Good.
Great.
So I think it came in a little bit under the budget, right? So
yes,
I looked at the bid.
including all the add-ons.
Yeah.
Great.
So any other questions? And we posted this to be an hour and a half, so we have some time left to look at the resident proposals for this year if people are ready to move to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I got to share again. Oops.
Okay, I see Sarah's hand is up.
Yeah, just before we get started on that,
Mhm.
and while we're waiting, I mean, I assume the departments are submitting their projects, and last year we had, there was like a sheet for each one. And there were some missing, there was such a mismatch between the list in the table and the detail we got. I hope Melissa and the town manager will make sure that the departments submit, that it's all consistent, so we don't waste time.
Yep. So
yeah.
I have to say that I am stalling this project because I'm at the point of um, strongly requesting that the departments meet my form and guideline so that our deadlines for submitting some of the projects. And because right now I don't have a complete request pool, I don't want to present it because I think that, the truth is the requests that I've received so far are not from the most expensive departments. And I feel like that, well, I know that all the overall requests will exceed the amount that we have available. And so we need to have those discussions with the departments about what can be put off a year, and, we'll share them all with you, but, kind of in a more, what I hope, closer to being a balanced forecast, saying, we met with the fire department, they want, you know, these 6 vehicles. I'm making stuff up, but there is a vehicle or 2 in there. And they, they have their communications equipment on there that's a joint project with the police. And, what of those projects need to happen today? And, can one of these vehicles be pushed to next year so that we can do something for the police department, or vice versa? So that we can fund, the most urgent needs. And of course, if I ask them all right now, they're the most urgent need, but one department can't have all the funds. And so I'm waiting for a couple larger departments to submit, and then we'll have those conversations with the staff about, okay, help us prioritize, because, this is how much is available, and what can you push off for a year, and what is critical right now, so that when we present it to you, you have that information. Again, this I submitted and asked for the resident request back in November. We closed that request in mid-December. And so I've been sitting on these for quite some time. I have had a couple conversations about different ones with the departments that will manage the project should they go to fruition. But I wanted them to look at them, and these cost estimates are estimates, done by the citizens. And so I don't know how realistic they are. And some of them, they asked me to tell them how much something would cost, and I literally have no idea. And I don't want to pay an engineer to go out there and do something if that's not something that we are actually going to go forward with. So, I mean, I couldn't. So for some people, I said, put in $50,000 so that we can see your request. Then it will be vetted by the DPW department on, what that real cost is, and then does it align with some of the things that they want to do. So, part of what I'm having them review is there any concerns about the project? And, is the cost realistic? Can it be included in something that the department's already doing? If they're this station road, like to put as speed bumps, like, I don't really know how much speed bumps cost, but, is that a realistic number? and even if it's not a realistic number, are we going to do some work on Station Road that if we included this in, that might make sense for the community? So I'm having, Guilford and his team look at that stuff, some stuff around speed monitoring and stuff. I'm having the chief look at, Chief Ting. So, and then, are the ideas set forward here possible, within our permitting and, some of these calls for widening of roads or are other things, and, is that allowable in that space? I don't know. So I'm just having them look at them, but because these are citizens' requests, I thought that you should see all of them, and then we'll find out, what, if any, concerns or support. I did ask them for support as well, that they have, with projects that those departments that are directly affected, how they feel about them, and if it's something that they can champion, that of course makes it a stronger presentation to you as well.
So I just want to say one framing for these resident requests. The town opened up this several years ago as an opportunity for people to say something at the $50,000 or less, smaller projects, to put it on the capital. We've always wrestled with this on JCPC because for a couple of things Melissa just said, but if we've been asking, for example, with speed bumps or bike lanes, we've been asking for a plan from the town so that we would know where these fit, rather than just we'll do speed bumps on this road, traffic slowing. And so we've wrestled with them every year. So I'm glad that you're really asking DPW, and they should come prepared then to speak to these for us.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Because-
sent them to them last week.
Because one of the issues has been how does it fit in the bigger plan, or is there a bigger plan, and should we just fund the things because the residents found us? So I'm going to open it up to discussion, but I have a few as I went through on, could these be funded by CPA? Could these be funded by the Community Development Block Grant? So is there a potential alternative funding source? So
So I
Bob,
am having Dave Zomack look at this list as well.
okay.
For that and other, because the culvert probably has some wetlands, like what other areas do we need to consider when doing these? So I've had planning look at them as well.
Okay, Bob,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that some of these estimates are, they're just not realistic. Like the Station Road shoulders, $50,000. I mean, that's the maximum they can ask for, but there's no way we can do that for $50,000. I happen to know that area very well, and it is a very dangerous area. I brought this up to the town manager as something that I think should be a priority. For all honesty, this is in my district, so these are my constituents, but it is something that we should do, and 50,000 won't cover it. There's lots of trees that have to be removed or poles that have to be moved, and the road needs to be resurfaced. So I mean, it's a big project, but I'm also wondering if any of these fall within the bid area, because we do have that funding from Amherst College that was focused on road improvements within the bid. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where the bid starts and ends. So that should be something that we look
Could
at.
we look at as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob, I would just want to respond to one thing, if we, on the Station Road example, what has happened in the past, and I don't know whether the group wants to, is what was proposed was a study of what would it take so that we could do it for the amount of money that's in the residence. So years ago, we had a study of putting in sidewalks on East Pleasant. And that study was actually done, and we've never funded the sidewalk, and we've never seen the result of the study. But they did go out and plot where the sidewalk would go, and, you know, should say it could go here. So should we ever have the money, there is a project, so that a big project might have to be turned into a study rather than, but studies can be done with this money is all I'm gonna say, if it's a capital study. Sarah,
Yeah, I confess I didn't reread the report, so excuse me, but I thought we authorized Janet McGowan's request last year.
yeah,
This is
see,
the
that's
same
what I thought.
request.
I thought this one was a duplicate also, and I know she submitted 2 last year, Melissa, so you might just double check with her because there is now a blinking light. I think she wanted them in 2 different places, Sarah, and she got 1. Having just driven by down the street, there is one doing this, so this might be a second one. Just,
Yeah, I can double check. I mean, when I had first put the report in, I did include 2 of the requests from last year. But then I double checked and went back, and this is a new request from her this year. So I'll compare it to last year's request and then see, you know, what the difference is. And then when we have, I didn't invite them because, you know, I don't think we're at a place where we know whether or not we can, you know, truly discuss them without the input of the departments. But, you know, I'll ask her to clarify the difference between last year and this year, in advance of that.
Bridget,
Yeah, I'm really glad that there's been some thought, like, how does this fit into the plan overall for different roads? I think everyone on the road they live on can see some dangers in that area. And so if we're thinking town-wide, how are we distributing the money in a way that's equitable? Not that, like, I'm glad one citizen noticed, that helps us take note, but also how do we distribute it in a way that's fair, you know? And then also, like, the DPW has their pavement schedule, and they're doing some equity indexing and that type of thing to make sure we're doing it in a fair way. So I'm really glad that's going to DPW and PD for a plan overall. And then I just wonder, like, I really love that gardening idea at Buttermint Farm, but it said to hire an expert, and I wonder, what are our definitions of capital? How do we define capital? And then if not, how do we shepherd these to the appropriate place in a way that's respectful of the citizens?
Bridget, that was one I wanted to flag as potentially a community development block grant because of the particular area it's in and the targeted population. So Melissa, you might ask Dave if he thinks that that grant proposal period has closed, but there will be another opening up.
Well, right, and also a community garden would fall in CPA as well. You know, might be either one. See if he can't find a
And the answer is part of it, the tools might, but hiring gardeners wouldn't, you know, so
Oh, yeah, you're right.
in terms of what is, and our definition of capital has been $10,000 or more. So if it's gardening tools, it might not even rate, you know, so you're right on, is it capital or not? But also where might it slot because it's a creative idea?
Mhm.
Nat?
Yes, thanks. Since I'm new, I'm still working my way through a lot of these documents, but one question, just looking at the list of citizen requests, if the committee wants to advance any of those, I don't see those listed separately in the capital improvement program. So we have departments, you know, facilities, IT, finance, police, et cetera. There's no separate category for citizens. So how do those get reflected?
So I mean, I mean, I think we funded a few of them last year, and they were related to DPW and public safety because they were about traffic lights and you know, basically walkway and roadway safety. And so that's why I've asked public safety planning and in DPW to review these, because I think that, you know, because this group and it make it to the capital plan, you know, it is that department, most likely the DPW department, who will have to fulfill it. So it will come in their category, but it can absolutely, you know, make a note within the description, or even color tag it the way that we do for energy improvements. Like when we buy a hybrid vehicle, we put a little green leaf. So maybe we can have some other kind of notation or symbol that recognizes that it's a roadway project. It falls under DPW, but this is a citizen's request, if that is helpful for the committee.
And Nat, I can, well, first of all, I can send you last year's committee report, but in the document, there is something called, on page 8, there's something called traffic signs, traffic calming, $60,000. Those were all citizen requests, resident requests. They were these blinking lights and pieces. And in the capital plan narrative, the town manager said some of these came from residents. So we didn't do what the color coding that Melissa said, but we did indicate that these were funded as a result. And in our report, we do have a little cluster, and it ends up, of course, you know, if we say 60,000, it comes out of our cash cap, you know, it comes out of the line. So there are 2 places they've been flagged, both narrative with sentences, but to the extent they are explicit. The example I gave of the East Pleasant sidewalk study, which was highly recommended, and we thought it was it just went into sidewalks under DPW. And a few people who had proposed that came to the town manager 4 years in a row to say, I think the money is there. And he said, what are we talking about? So it actually was the Joint Capital Planning Committee report where you could see the number, and the study was done. But there's been an effort to flag them when we've confirmed this. And just so everyone knows, when we go through each department, it's going to be like what we're doing now. We generate questions, and rather than, we may be challenging some projects, but our last couple meetings are on what are our recommendations. So, you know, picking up whether we feel positively, negatively as we're going through, but we don't have to make a decision during the time we're looking at the pieces. It's more getting questions, and Melissa will then take our questions back and provide us information based on what she's found out.
You want me to scroll down? There's 2 on an additional page here. So there's this shoulder one. This is the one I think that Bob was talking about. This is going to be significantly more than that, but this is to put a basically a shoulder or a bike path, and it down, I believe a 1/4 mile of a section of road. And then this one here did not come through the form. But this citizen reached out to me to say, I don't understand how much this costs. And I had suggested to her, like I did to others, you know, put it in for 50,000, at least we'll talk about it. And then, we can get a reality check on that later. She didn't do that, but I thought, because she had sent several emails to me, that I would just add that on this list with a, acknowledgement that we didn't know how much it would cost, and that when the DPW team reviewed it, they could let us know what street lighting would cost in that area, and if that's a project that they could work on.
I see 2 hands, Nat and then Sarah. Sarah.
So I think maybe part or an answer to part of Nat's question was that this list of resident requests is new, and the tables we were looking at before are 10 months old, right? So they haven't been incorporated. And maybe when Melissa gives us, an updated spreadsheet, they will be there, flagged in some manner.
So I've made, if anyone has any other questions that occur to them about this set of proposals, they should send it to me and I'll share it with Melissa. On a, can this be part of a larger group? Your question, Bridget, about equity and larger plan is what we've been confronted with every year with these, so what we've been asking for, and I'll share the last year's report. I think the last 3 JCPC reports have said, please come up with a more master plan, and the council's made this a priority for road safety and bicyclists and pedestrians, so that when we get road calming, whether it's speed humps or speed signs, we've identified where they would go rather than just these happen to find us through a resident request. We had several a couple years ago that looked at there are some streets that to avoid a traffic signal, you can cut through streets, and people were zooming through these resident streets. So they were saying, can't you do something, a speed hump, something, because they're speeding through a street with no sidewalks. And another member of JCPC said, I have a street like that too. And so, how do we decide which of these streets we work on? And so we've been asking for either DPW or a larger TAC, or there are committees working on these to come up with identify areas and what's the plan. So we may be in that situation again this year, unless there is a plan that, as far as I know, the council hasn't seen one, but maybe behind the scenes, there is a plan on some of these. So I think those are the questions we've raised in the past about, how do we, as we're considering some of these that are about road safety, and we've got these issues around town, whether it's sidewalks, or crosswalks, or blinking lights, or speed humps, where do we put them? So that's something that we're probably going to have to flag again this year. Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the issue of speed bumps rubs up against an issue of public safety, in that the DPW doesn't like to put them on streets that are used extensively by ambulance services, fire trucks, things like that. So, and actually by PVTA buses. I'm not saying that that part of Station Road where it's been proposed is one of those or not, but I think we should have, as part of this master plan, we should know what streets could receive speed bumps or other traffic slowing treatments that work. And which ones can't for other reasons. So,
And since you're on TSO, that could be one of your your goals as a council committee. So are there any other questions for today? And so I have on my to-do list, I will do minutes. And our process on minutes, to try to take as little time with the committee as possible, if you're okay with it, is, in this case, I'm going to draft them, but I also have had, I've taken the responsibility of reviewing them and editing them before we have to vote, so we just expedite it and rather than doing line items of minutes. So if I'm going to propose that again for this time, and we can see whether maybe Sarah wants to read my minutes this time, and from then on, I'll be the reader of the minutes. Sarah, so I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about our meeting schedule. Is is this a regular meeting day and time, or are we going to work that out from week to week?
I think we were gonna try and talk about the schedule going forward um, through April. Do you agree with that, Kathy?
Yeah, and Sarah, I think you had requested that we start later than 9 o'clock, and today was, Bob said he couldn't do today if it was later. But, you know,
Yeah,
but does,
I've got another call at 11:30, so.
so if Wednesday morning works, does Wednesday starting at 10 or 11 work as a regular time, I guess is, and that would be our time slot, and then Melissa could say, not this week, but we could all put it on our calendar as likely. And I see Lee's hand is up on this.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
10 o'clock and later is fine. 9 o'clock on Wednesday as a regular meeting doesn't work for me at all.
Okay.
hey, Bridget,
So bookmarking the day works best for me usually. So like something like at 9 or something like at 4. This Wednesday, I happen to be staying late in Springfield for an event at a school. So going in late was okay. But usually I have to be at work in Springfield by now. So.
okay,
the Wednesday morning
so
would
the
regularly
Wednesday
work.
morning doesn't work well for you then.
Mm-mm.
Okay, Nat,
I was going to talk about Wednesday, but that's off the table. So
okay, so, well, we can send out another, for right now. So Wednesday at 9 is a potential time
No,
that
you said Wednesday at,
at 10, at Wednesday at 10, and Wednesday at 10, we lose Bridget. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, why was Wednesday at 4 not?
So
Who does
what
that not
about
work?
Wednesday at 4?
That works.
That
Does Wednesday at 4 work for everyone? And Melissa, does Wednesday at 4 work for you?
just want to make sure, that see. I have finance committee in my hometown, and I just got to make sure what day those meetings are. Of course, I don't have them on here. Let's just say yes for now. Wednesday
Okay.
at 4 p.m. I want to double check.
So then
Right.
everyone should just put a hold on their calendars for Wednesdays, JCPC, 4 o'clock. And I'd suggest you put it through all of March as well, you know, just as the placeholder so that, you know, Nat, I see your hand is up.
I'm away the week of March with the 11th.
Okay, if people send me that schedule, it's fine. These are Zoom, so you can always review it, review what happened at meetings. So missing a meeting, it's going to be fine. As long as there's 7 of us, we have to have 4 to convene a meeting. That's our quorum. But if people just let me know in advance, and that would also mean that you can't be the minute taker for that day. So get prepared to be a minute taker for another day. So, okay, so we're set up for that time. And
Okay.
Melissa, you'll let us know if it just can't be done because you don't have a
Yeah,
Zoom.
I'm a little worried about next week, so why don't because we have some meetings today and they may be very fruitful, and then I'll have a lot more information. So would it be helpful for me to set up a meeting at Wednesday at 4, through the end of April, and then we'll cancel them if needed?
Yeah, I think that I think that would make sense. So both it's on the town calendar and it's on ours. And for everyone, what has been the practice is that Melissa puts everything in the JCPC packet. And you should assume that if there is a meeting, there's something in the packet, but I will try to alert people because a few times people didn't know to look in the packet. It wasn't that we all got notices something has been populated. Okay, so next Wednesday at 4, unless we hear from Melissa by end of the week or later. It's easy to cancel meetings. It's harder to do them.
Right, and so I do know that Wednesday meetings need to be posted by Friday this week because of the holiday, so you'll know by Friday.
Okay,
Okay,
and thank you. And and at that point, when we meet next, we may or we may not have a schedule of, we're gonna have DPW this week, fire and others this week, or it may be that you just to choose one department is ready, because
Right.
we can take them in big chunks, so. So seeing, I
Kathy,
think,
sorry, can I
Yeah.
ask? If,
Yeah.
if no department is ready, will we need to, is there anything we can do fruitfully?
I mean, I might be able to provide an update on where we are with the debt because I have a meeting with our borrowing advisor this week, on Friday. So I may know on Friday that so I might be maybe about like a half-hour meeting where I have an update of what what we have, what we're looking at, and what Jen and I have projected. So if that's valuable to do before we have, and it's, I mean, what the unfair part is that some departments are ready, but we haven't been, because not every department is ready. We haven't had that sort of like, okay, now we need you to prioritize because there's only so much. And we have requests that are double what we have available. So, you as the department head, pick your top 3 because, we'll put the others in the following year, but we have to have a path forward. And it seems inappropriate to bring bring the fire department, who's been ready for quite some time, quite frankly, bring forward all of his requests. And then we come through with facilities and they're like, yeah, but something dramatic is happening and we need to do a big HVAC fix. I'm making up stuff. I have no idea what they're going to bring. And it needs to happen now. And the new administrative truck for the fire department can wait a year, like those kind of.
so I think, Melissa, if you want, I know you're trying to be efficient with our time as well as your time. If there's some, you can make this judgment that there's some that are ready, including the smaller groupings.
Mm.
You could let them know that this is just so we can ask questions about it.
Mhm.
At least the first 2 or 3 years of JCPC, and last year it happened too, the numbers came in way higher than what we could afford. And so we just
Listen.
challenged them and we slimmed the list. And then more importantly, the town manager slimmed the list,
Okay.
as we got down. So just since we're on deadline on getting this to the town manager,
Mhm.
I'll let you and he make that decision, but I think it would be okay, despite my plea in the past, to come in with nearly balanced. We didn't do that last year, and it may be this year we can't either, and we can just work on getting down to the most critical.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so I think we're at, if I don't see any other hands up, Hala, is your hand up or is that just oh, that's my little pointer. I don't see any other hands up. So I think we are ready to adjourn, if everyone is in agreement. All right. So then I move that we adjourn and just put your thumbs up if you agree. Okay, so we are adjourned at 10:29.
Great.
Thank you all very much. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Melissa.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.